Yeah, I'm Will. I'm co-chair or coordinator or convener, whatever you want to call it, of the local group of Living Streets in Shipley and Saltaire. And as Helen's just said, I've been asked to talk about what Living Streets is and how it's organised, and what you have to do to set up a local group and what sort of campaigns we get involved in, just to give you the general lowdown. Obviously, really, I'm just here to answer any questions, so don't sit there and hold on to them, just interrupt. I'm likely to get a lot faster and a lot more enthusiastic as we go along, so interrupt forcefully. Yeah, let's talk about what Living Streets is. This sort of like a basic organisational chart here, that the national charity Living Streets is a huge organisation, first set up as the charity for pedestrians, something like that, the Pedestrians Association, I think it was called 100 years ago. And they are the everyday charity, so the charity for everyday walking, that's their sort of slogan. But that's expanded now to include all forms of active travel, inclusive of wheelchair users and also cycling, because cycling is awesome, really efficient, and walking is a hard sell, whereas cycling is quite easy to sell. And then underneath the national charity, these local groups, there are lots of them at the moment. I think there's over 50 all around the UK, and they vary in size from a street, someone's road, to citywide. There's a huge variety of size. And these local groups are really just affiliated with the national charity. We don't speak for the national charity or work for them in any way. And that's good, because it means you're independent. You can sort of deal with your own campaigns, your own issues in the local area. It's also good for the national charity, because it means that we can be a bit more shirty, basically, and it doesn't push back on them so much. And then within each local group, we try and get as many supporters from the local area as we can. We add them to our email lists. They have a choice just to receive the local group email or to sign up to the national charities emails as well. And they also have a choice to donate to the national charity, although, to be honest, that's not something that we push in any way. So let's have a look at the national charity to start with. As I said, it's the charity for everyday walking is the tagline, and they set out these visions once every 5 years. They produce a document with their vision, and the 2020 to 2025 vision includes these 6 ambitions. And these are things that they campaign on at a national level. They lobby national government. They sit on and advise committees in Westminster. They are really keyed in. So they want networks of walking routes and cycling routes, basically the infrastructure and incentives to get out of your car. They've been campaigning really heavily on the highway code and improvements to that, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. They're hot on 20-mile-an-hour limits. They have just finished a huge UK-wide campaign on pavement parking, and they also run loads of campaigns with schools. They have a really successful walk to school campaign once a year, just a week long, and they run campaigns on school streets and things like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And they are trying to encourage lots more local groups. They've had a few changes at the top recently, and the people who deal with this are in flux at the moment. So it's a bit disorganized, to be honest, but they are really keen to get other local groups, particularly in the north. When we started to talk about one in Shipley, it turns out that a lot of Living Streets higher-ups live in Saltaire and Shipley and North Yorkshire and around here. They're really keen to see some action here, because traditionally it's all been in London, very successfully in London. You can't see this because it's not a slideshow, so move that out of the way. Let's get out of the way. So some of the campaigns that the national charity have been involved in, they've just finished a big campaign, as I said, on pavement parking. Here are some pictures from nearby. This is Solitaire, lovely bit of parking. It's always a VW, isn't it? This is from the actual World Heritage Site itself, completely blocking pavements on both sides. It's a huge issue in the World Heritage Society, the World Heritage Site of Saltaire. But I think it's a national issue generally, particularly for people pushing prams or wheeling wheelchairs. They've had this huge campaign. It's been really successful. They've been trying to get the government to change the law, and consultation came out of that. It's just closed. We're waiting to find out what the government are going to say about it. But there's a strong indication that they're going to extend the illegality of pavement parking out of London to other areas of the UK. It's currently illegal in London, but it's not illegal elsewhere. Although it is illegal to drive onto a pavement, and it is illegal to obstruct the highway. But for some reason, once you're on the pavement, you can park there for, without any consequence. So this is something we're waiting on for a response from the Department of Transport, but it was a really successful campaign, really well received. In fact, there were 5,000 people supporting the manifesto that was produced by Living Streets. Other campaigns that they get involved in: street space, as I said, making space for shared use, pedestrianizations, cycle lanes, things like that. Really hot on school streets and walking to school and 20 mile an hour zones. So it's a shame this isn't working, because this is a little video which scrolls through all the local groups that there are, but you have to trust me, there's 50 odd of them. I think there's been 5 or 6 joined just this year alone. And we started it, well, actually I started it on my own during the lockdown. It was probably exactly a year ago when we started this group. Just fed up with the level of traffic and the sort of domination of cars in Shipley and Saltaire. And then the lockdown happened and showed us how lovely these places could be. So I set it up. I co-opted my neighbour from a few doors down, Simon, so we sort of co-chair the group. You have to have 2 people to sign up. And then we also managed to convince both of our wives to come in and help. So Emma is really good at maths, so she got the finance job, and my wife Beth, she writes a good letter, so she got the lobbying job. Basically, there's just 4 of us. That's the core group. But as you'll see as we go through the presentation, there's a lot more people involved and affiliated with the group. But really, you only need 2 people, more if you can get them, to be actively involved, and everyone else is just sort of affiliated. So the process that we're getting started is really straightforward, but it takes ages, and it took ages when a guy called Will was in charge of recruiting local groups, and he moved on and was replaced by somebody else in the interim called Holly, who was brilliant, but then she moved on, and so there's a bit of churn at the moment, and it's probably going to take even longer to set up. It took us about 3 months from start to finish, and it will probably take a bit longer at the moment. But basically, you declare your interest through the website. You just click on a link, which I can give you, says start a local group, and you send them an email and they get back to you. They'll organise a quick meeting by Zoom, usually, about the local issues and what your aims are as a group and what the other local groups are in the area, which is quite useful. 2 people read and sign the Living Streets Charter, which is just, basic stuff about appropriate use of social media and that sort of thing. And then you wait ages and ages, and eventually you get an email address. They give you a list of all the existing supporters of the national charity in your postcode. It gives you sort of a starting group, and they'll design your logo and they give you some funding. The funding is £120 a year, so it's not a lot, but it covers a few leaflets. And in the first year, there's an uplift, so it's £180 in the first year. So really good option if you're just starting from nothing. You guys are starting from the position of having another group, so whether or not that will be attractive, I don't know, but I found it really useful just to have enough money to print some leaflets and posters and a bit of support, given this is the first campaign organisation I've been involved in. And the way that local groups interact with the national charity is that you are expected to get involved in the national campaigns, basically on Twitter or Facebook, and responding to their consultations when they send them out once every year or so, a couple of times a year maybe. And then in response, in return, you get support for the local issues that are facing your local area, Ilkley in this case. And just to give you a flavour of some of the stuff that is available to you, and they give you huge amounts of information and social media stuff, and logos and letterheads, guidance on how to run campaigns, how to work with the media, how to work with politicians, loads of communication stuff, campaign templates, risk assessments for events, all this sort of stuff, in addition to the money. And there's also a massive folder of really nitty-gritty policy details as well, particularly on low traffic neighbourhoods, how to campaign for new pedestrian crossings, 20-mile-an-hour zones. They've got like quite detailed documentation about how you raise a campaign and all the facts and figures that you can use in that campaign. And then within our local group itself, you start to sort of get out there and get supporters. We've got 140 people on our email list now. As I said, we've been going for almost exactly a year. 400 Twitter followers. And then by linking up with a load of other groups, Friends of the Earth, Clean Air Bradford, a speeding campaign group called Breaking Point, and most recently, Bradford Shipley Travel Alliance, we've got access really to an additional 200 people through their mailing lists. And we're starting a new collaboration, hopefully, with this group, local group called Access for the Disabled. The big question is, what do our supporters do? And at the moment, I haven't really got an answer for that. I don't know if it's the same with your climate action group, but I basically email them and they respond to consultations that I send them. But they're not really active supporters. They're sort of in the background at the moment, responding to consultations, possibly sending a few emails to councillors, possibly talking about these issues to their friends and family, but they're not actually on the streets with knocking on doors yet. Hopefully they will be soon. Okay, so what do we do? This is what we set out to do at the very beginning, was our sort of stepwise strategy. We were going to try and get as many supporters as possible. And we're aiming for 150 at the end of the first year, given that there's been limits on how much we can talk to people. 140 is not bad, I think. We thought about gathering evidence. That's something that LivingStreets is really keen on local groups doing. They give you a lot of support in doing street audits and finding out where the problems are, where crossings should be, desire lines and things like that. So that was a major part of our strategy. We wanted to do a lot of solutions, like proposed solutions. Some of the early people we spoke to in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and also in Bradford Council, some of the officers we spoke to said that a lot of times funding comes down from on high from central government, and basically the councils have to have solutions worked up, and ideas worked up to be able to apply for those pots of money. And unfortunately, with a council like Bradford, who are struggling to, do the basic counselling, picking up litter and stuff, they're not spending ages working up these solutions. So we thought we'd start doing that ourselves a little bit. With the proviso that we don't know all the answers, but we're just sort of showing that other answers are possible. We want to do direct action. It's been curtailed a lot over the last few months, obviously. And then we do a lot of lobbying, a lot of emails to councillors, town councillors and district councillors, a lot of responding to consultations, a lot of encouraging other people to respond to consultations. These are all hidden. So let's skip through these. I might have to redo this, Helen, when we can do the actual presentation for your recording. I'll have to do that. It'll be helpful. So what have we actually been campaigning on? Well, the most important campaign the reason we started this group really was to campaign for a low traffic neighbourhood in the World Heritage Site of Saltaire. This was definitely not on the cards when we set up our group. It was not talked about at all. But as a result of lots of sort of behind the scenes lobbying and making sure that when the active travel money came to Bradford Council, that they were considering Saltaire as a trial low traffic neighbourhood, we made the case to them very strongly that it would be well received, and it's quite a middle class greeny kind of area similar to Ilkley, I suppose. That, you know, we thought it would be well received there. They've decided to trial 3 active travel neighbourhoods now, which is great. One of them is in Solitaire. And we've been campaigning over the last 4 weeks to get people to respond positively to the consultation which is online, shown here on this map. So there's 2 other low traffic neighbourhoods, one in Frisinghall, one in Barker End. They've got about 40 comments each, and about 50% of those comments are negative. Following about total about 12 of us campaigning over 2 weekends and a lot of social media. Don't know how much credit we can take for this, but in Saltaire there are over 400 comments and well over 95% of them are positive. So obviously that's because this sort of scheme is bound to be well received in Saltaire, but I'm hoping that we can take a little bit of credit for a few of those responses. We've really sent a strong message to Bradford Council to say, look, if you're going to trial it here. There's a lot of support. So we're really pleased about that. We are Shipley and Saltaire living streets, not just Saltaire. And I don't live in Saltaire, I live in the outskirts of Saltaire, in Shipley. But for some reason, people don't like to call it Shipley. People around here like to pretend they live in Saltaire. In fact, there's people call it Upper Saltaire. I don't know why. Makes it sound a bit posher, I suppose. But I'm the opposite. I'm very much, I'm adamant that I live in Shipley. I want Shipley to be a place where people want to come and live, not just think about the World Heritage Site. So our next big campaign is going to be definitely in Shipley. This map is showing where the markets are in Shipley Town Centre. This red square shows you the point at which the canal towpath reaches a crossing here, which you can get into Shipley from. And unfortunately, there's no link. You have to cross this majorly busy road, and then Shipley itself is congested with cars. So our next campaign is going to be to take this road here, highlighted in red, and campaign for it to be pedestrianised, or at least turn into a shared space street with more facilities for cyclists and pedestrians. I think by linking Shipley Town Centre to the existing active travel network of the canal towpath, we'll bring a lot more people up this road and into the markets. That's the idea. So that's going to be a big campaign, and we've already started scoping this out with local politicians, like we did with the active travel neighbourhood. We've got some support from them, and hopefully next time they get some money, they'll consider it, maybe as part of the Towns Fund, which they've just received £25 million for. This is the road. It looks ugly from this picture, but it's actually brilliant. There's loads of bars and cafes up here, and this tower in the background is where the market is, and behind me is a main road and then a canal. So if this were an active travel route, that would be a great thing. So that's our next campaign. A really long-term campaign is a shared space street on Gordon Terrace. I don't know if you know this street. It's like the second most important economic hub in Shipley, and it's sort of half part of the World Heritage Site, totally overrun. It's a major transport route, and we're campaigning hard to turn this into a shared space street. Early on, we had a transport planner from Calderdale Council get in touch with us and just say, can I design you some shared space stuff for Gordon Terrace, which was awesome. So unfortunately, he's moved to Blackpool now, but we've got all this work he's done, technical drawings and documentation and artistic renditions of what this street would look like if it weren't 2 lanes of traffic and 2 lanes of parking. Similar to and inspired by this place called Poynton. If anyone else heard of this shared space scheme in Wellington? If you haven't, I'll give you the link for a video. It reminds me so much of this road in Shipley. It actually reminds me a little bit of Ilkley as well, although probably got posher shops. It's like a really, really cool project that they did in Poynton, and they totally transformed the way that the road works for people. and we're trying to encourage something similar. The problem is, as I said, the councils have to have these plans worked up when the government says, here's some money, do you want it? Final one I'm going to talk about is a pedestrian crossing on this road. So as part of this shared space idea, we thought a nice, easy, quick win would be to campaign for a pedestrian crossing across that road. We set out this fake zebra crossing and had these painted black and white sticks with balloons on top to imitate the lights. And we spent an hour doing this. Later found out that I was blocking the highway illegally. There were no consequences, thankfully. We did a full risk assessment and we made sure that people were safe, that we were walking them across. We made sure that traffic had stopped and all the rest of it. It was really well organised by a lady called Philly in particular. And we spoke to maybe, I don't know, 100, 150 people that day about the need for a crossing. Subsequently, not related to our campaign, I don't think, there was a proposal from the council to install a crossing here, a pathing crossing, unfortunately, rather than a zebra crossing. And the response was huge. So I think, although we can't take credit for the proposal, we can suggest that we had an influence on the number of responses. There's loads of other stuff going on. I would love to get involved in schools. At the moment, they're under the hammer. School leaders are really difficult to get in touch with because they're so busy. And we're doing some projects on cycle infrastructure as well, working with some academics at the University of Leeds. So there's some little projects going on in the background. And then what's been really important is affiliating ourselves as a group to other groups in the area with similar interests. So we're officially affiliated with Friends of the Earth, and I'm going on a march with them in September. We're really involved in Shipley Town Council. A lot of their councillors are members of our group. So we're supporting the Shipley Towns Fund's proposal as they come out, and various other little affiliate campaigns. So there's our contact details. We don't have Facebook yet, but that's hopefully coming soon. And if you've got any questions about any of that, what the National Charity does, what we do, or how to get started, please ask away.
Thank you so much, Will. That was a wonderful talk. I feel as though I know an awful lot more than I did at the start. So that's fantastic. So do people have questions? I'm just wondering, in the view that I've got at the moment, I can't actually see everyone. Hang on, let me just change it. Right, I think it's simplest if people just raise their hands, actually, their real hands. So Steve,
can you tell us a bit more about the low traffic neighbourhood, Will? How low? What will happen to all the cars that people in Saltaire own, presumably some of which presently park on pavements? And why is there such a high, there's a great 95% support it. I'm really encouraged and surprised by that, but can you pick it to pieces a bit?
Yeah, okay, so there's two problems with cars in Saltaire. One is the parking issue, which is mainly residents. And there is an issue with people parking up to use the train station, but most of it is residents parking.